I work with Richard on a program that we've developed where we're doing home visiting with dads and babies.
Huh.
And Richard, you there? Okay. Well, anyways, that project started.
I hear you, and obviously you can't hear me either.
We can hear you.
Shit. Oh, but I cannot hear you guys.
I'm trying to have him call back and see if he can get a better connection.
Yes, I've messaged him asking him to use a phone instead of computer audio. I'm not sure how he's connected.
Okay. So,
yes, I'll be more careful. But I have to be able to hear you as well. I'm using the audio. Is this better? All right. I'm sorry.
Richard, can you hear me?
I'm messaging him on the chat, so hopefully he's able to having him use a phone instead of the computer.
Is there a way you can at least mute him for now so that I could get started and not hear his voice in the background talking about his technical difficulties? I'm really sorry about this. Yeah, I'm sorry about this, everyone who's on this call. Trying to think where we can start, but so a few years ago, Richard and I had started a group which no longer really exists, but a group of men working in early childhood mental health and kind of other kind of related areas in law, in program development, in psychology, and we started talking about what we felt like was needed in our field to better include or better train, or better really include fathers in programs that exist in LA County. And one of our first ideas was to run a home visiting program with dads and babies, dads whose partners are having more severe postpartum depression or anxiety. So we received a grant from Postpartum Support International to run this program for this pilot program for a year, which is actually what we're going to talk to you a little bit about today. And so there's no doubt that over the last 20 years, we've made really incredible strides in helping moms and babies. And as we got into this sort of project, we never felt like we want to take away anything from what happens, the services that exist for moms and babies. But I think what we did realize is that there needs to be something more, because in infants' lives, they're actually more than just moms and babies. The dads can play a very unique and important role in supporting babies' development, in terms of promoting autonomy, in terms of enriching their social world. They can be very supportive to moms. Engaged dads serve as a sort of protective factor against different types of stress that exist in moms in the perinatal period. So Richard and I have really been thinking about that a dyadic model of working and supporting families is valuable, but is there something more that we could be doing? And that's sort of the sort of entry point into our home visiting work with dads. And the truth is, we haven't quite figured out how to engage a whole family system in home visiting and early childhood in a way that's really effective. But what we are learning is that dads need a sort of a tremendous amount of support kind of in the perinatal period. That dads respond very well to home visiting, and that by engaging dads in this period, they can learn about how to be better dads. They can be supported around their own sort of transition to fatherhood. They can be better partners. And so we're hoping today, even as we're going to present you with some videos of our work, that we're going to really think together about kind of what's happening between the dads and babies, what's happening in this family, but also how these ideas can be implemented kind of in the programs that you all work in. And how actually, like, can you take something from what we're talking about today and go and apply it? Or can you even kind of reconsider some things you've done with families, and in light of what we talk about today, maybe think about, could you have done something different, particularly with engaging dads, making dads feel like they're really an integrated and central part of a program. Because Richard and I believe, and I think it's actually supported by the research that dads are very integral to babies' lives. So is Richard on the phone?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. And I sort of talked through what you were going to talk about, but
yes, you did you did a lovely job. I just want to apologize. It turns out when I use the external mic, it does something. You can hear me, but for some reason I couldn't hear you. So now I'm with you and happy to be joining you and looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, great. So do you want to say a little bit more, or should we move forward?
I think we should plow on.
Okay. So we're going to show, actually there's sort of 4 videos, but we're going to show them in 2 parts today. And what we're going to have you all consider or to really think about is about kind of tracking the progression of growth between the father and the baby that we're working with. And what I'd like you to notice is actually how both the dad and the baby are growing together. And I think that's something that we don't often think about when we're first of all, when we're talking about babies, that it's not only the baby that's developing, the mom is developing alongside the baby, with the baby, and also the dads are developing with the baby as well. And what I think you can really see from our work is that kind of a home visitor can be quite supportive in helping a dad grow with their baby. So the things that you'll be thinking about a lot of things when we show this video, but what I'd like you to consider are things like kind of joy, like tracking things like around like joy and vitality, things around kind of reciprocity, around kind of this back and forth communication, this kind of serve and return that both the dad and the baby are participating in. I want you to consider shared attention, how they pay attention to things together. And really just how they're growing. So we have the family that we'll be presenting on, the mom who you won't see in the video is named Martha, and these are sort of coded names, I guess you could say. And so Martha was in a program for for an intense, sort of a severe perinatal mood disorder. She's originally born in, so it was a 5-day-a-week intensive outpatient program. She was originally born in Central America and has been living in the U.S. for, I don't know, probably about 7 to 10 years. And her family is both here in the LA area and still in Central America. And the father that we're working with is, his name is Klaus, and he is originally born in Europe, and he's lived in the U.S. for about 5 years. He came to the U.S. For some additional kind of graduate training and a fellowship in science. And he's about 37 years old. And lastly, there's John, their baby, who when we started working, and we've been working together, I've been working with him for about a year now. He was about 6 months. And, you know, I ask if you, I don't suspect that anyone's going to recognize the people in the video, but if you do recognize them, if you could kind of step out of the webinar, because we do have permission to screen their videos, but we do want to keep this as confidential as possible. Also, you might notice throughout the videos there are a few little like cuts. That's my like really poor editing, but it's basically when the father is using his son's name, and again, I want to sort of preserve the confidentiality. So okay, let me get this video up and running. Okay, here we go. And John is about, I would say, 7 months at this point. So in this second video, John is about probably between 8 and 9 months. Yeah, what's he saying right there? Hiya. Someone hurts you, hiya? Are you watching me record you? That's what he does. Can't you know it's about on the phone? He would take pictures. Or realize? Or he's watching phone. No, you're watching. Huh? That's a really nice that you've got going.
Okay, so we're interested now in wondering what you saw in that first video. And as always, we start with the strengths. So Malika's going to coordinate here, but if you saw something that you thought was a strength in the relationship between the father and the baby, or in the father or in the baby, let's start with that.
Oh, and also you can ask Malika to unmute you if you want to speak, or you can also text in the chat box.
Would anyone like me to unmute them? Just you can either raise your hand. There's a button on the chat on the attendees list. You can raise your hand, and I'll unmute you. Marlene Huerta, I can unmute you if you'd like to say a little bit more. She said interactions. They were both interacting, and the baby is acknowledged dad.
Mm-hmm. Good. I know this is a funny kind of way to have a conversation over a webinar, but we think we can pull this off so that I particularly appreciate Marlene being the first person to jump in. But I know everybody on this call is doing this work, and that you saw something.
Marlene, I've unmuted you if you wanted to add anything else. Myra Martinez says direct eye contact.
Hi, Prisma.
And smiling two-way communication. Oh, sorry, Prisma said that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Hi.
Dad was supporting back, and there was reciprocal interactions between dad and baby. Carla,
I think the physical part, observing the physical part in which the dad is, supporting joint attention and supporting the baby. You really understand. These guys know each other. They're not always having a great time, but they have things they do together, and the father knows a lot about the baby's physical needs. So just the way they're supported, I think what Jan brings up is really important. And the way, we've gotten to see this a few times, when the father lifts the ball way up and John's head goes back, the father's arm comes up so that the baby can continue to look. So there is a reciprocal kind of physical connection between them that I think is really important.
Okay, thank you. Carla Vialta said, I think that their floor time with the ball was great, working on motor skills with the baby.
Yes, absolutely. It's a very good place to start. And I know, Kevin, you are going to talk a little bit about taking the child's perspective in a minute, the mentalization part. But, the dad has the capacity to do this. I know we're starting with strengths, but he does this well. They obviously know each other. But there's also a level of frustration that appears to come to the baby with this, where the ball is close, he's reaching out, then the ball is gone, and he's always a little bit behind.
You really see how in the first video, he's a little bit behind, but it's not. I mean, it's not too frustrating.
No.
it's definitely within sort of a zone of his proximal development, but it's a little bit ahead. He's always a little bit ahead. And that's something that actually we think a lot about when we're working with dads, because dads tend to be a little bit more physical, tend to push babies a little bit outside of their kind of zone of development. But when you think about that in the context of a family, when you think about moms tend to be much more predictable, I should say, not all moms, but they tend to be more predictable. They tend to be more slower paced. They tend to actually, when approaching babies, almost like down-regulate their system, calm their system, whereas dads tend to make babies more excited, more upregulated, we would say. So you can think about kind of even within this family, like what types of different interactions both Klaus and maybe we're not seeing Martha, but they might bring to John. So like what a real benefit that can be. We don't really want two parents as long as the parents are safe, doing safe things, we don't want them doing the same exact thing. But I think in the first video, what you can really see is, it's very, and I think to some of the points that have been made already, it's very physical. It's very much about sort of focus on the sort of motor development. It's very sensory based, and there isn't much about communication. He's making some sounds, but I think they're meant to enliven the play, but they're not really bringing the baby, kind of enlivening it too much. I would say it's not super communicative. In the second video, you see there's more of a move to being communicative, particularly when the dad starts making sounds and facial expressions, and he's really using his whole body to engage the baby. But I think what you see in both of these situations is that it's pretty repetitive. And I'm seeing some more comments. Maybe we can address some of them. Here, let me just say a little bit more, and we'll go back to some of the comments. But the second, so something that we were doing in our program is at different periods we'd record the dads on video, and then we'd review the video with the dads to help them think about kind of their interactions with their babies, and one thing that the second video is, I'm so glad I caught that on tape, because at that time, at about 7 to 8 months, when really just started before, the dad felt like all he could do was bounce the baby up and down. That he would do that to play with him, to bring out joy. He would use that to calm him when he was kind of fussy or just kind of having a hard time to settle. He would use that when he didn't really know what to do. And I think that was a big thing in this period, where he's like, I don't really oftentimes know what to do. So I addressed this with him in a few different ways. One thing is, and actually you saw me do it a little bit in this video, although it was sort of a bit awkward, is when I asked him about, when the baby kind of jerked his head back a little bit, sort of, I asked him, well, what do you think the baby was saying? And the dad thought he wanted to go higher. He was more excited. And actually, in looking back on the video, the dad actually, the way the baby would kept on looking at me, the way the baby would be excited when he'd go up, but when he'd go down, he wasn't sustaining his joy. Was that the dad actually, in retrospect, thought maybe he was getting bored or distracted or didn't want to continue, which was actually the first time he ever realized that maybe his baby wouldn't want to continue. And he had been doing this for months and months. So one thing we really talked about is that kind of behavior always has meaning. Behavior is a baby's way of telling us what's going on inside his mind, or what he's feeling, what he's thinking, what purpose he has. And that the more the dad could understand what the behavior is communicating, what the behavior is saying about his thoughts, the baby's thoughts and feelings, that was going to really help their relationship. So another example of that actually came when it was actually, I think, through another video we did, where the baby was sort of resting on his dad, resting back on his dad, and kept touching his leg, and his dad initially receiving the touch, he thought, oh, it was purely behavioral. It was purely something behavioral or almost reflexive. But he realized that actually his baby was orienting towards him. His baby was making sure that he was feeling, that there was a way of feeling safe. That as long as my dad is close, as long as I could touch my dad, like I feel better about myself. I feel safer. And that was a real movement in this time of our work, to thinking about like moving from this sort of physical, motoric, sensory development where the play is really about that, to really developing a relationship, where we're really talking about a relational world, not just a sensory world. And so I encouraged him to follow his lead, to read his cues. We thought a lot about his cues at that time. I gave him some concrete skills to help him stay engaged with his son. So we talk about narrating or sportscasting. So actually what you hear in the beginning in the first video, you hear him making all those sounds. That was something that we had talked about, was how to enliven the play, or how to stay connected by using kind of using the dad's whole body to stay engaged with John. But what you see at this point is not quite integrated. So he's making the sounds, but he hasn't quite drawn his baby in. But he's definitely trying to put the ideas to action. And we talked a lot about development and kind of what John might be experiencing at different stages. You know, we talked about sleep, we talked about feeding, we talked about motor development, things like that. I don't know, Richard, is there anything you'd like to add? Or?
Well, I think that, you know, what it is, even though we don't have a set curriculum that we're using, and we are inventing and exploring, that it's very similar to the kinds of things that you will do, that you watch carefully what's happening, that you narrate for the parent. There's this parallel process, right? You are narrating for the parent what you see happening, and that gives the parent some insight. And then the psychoeducational pieces that are so critical to helping them move to the next step, which I think you'll see a lot of when we get to the next video.
Oh, I seen that we had another comment from Sahara, and she said that father and baby seem to be bonding well. Dad's getting at the baby's level by playing on the floor, and it's a great interaction. And I think, yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think that's true, that they are bonding well. And something that both Richard and I we talked a lot about is how dads take time to develop a relationship with their baby. You know, and that you can really see in this how they're working to get to know each other, and they're bonded. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. And then she wrote another comment about the second video. She said that the father seems to have a good understanding of the baby's cues, and then baby was jumping at So basically that he has a good understanding. I think he's really getting to know about what the baby's cueing, and that's when we were really focused on it at that point, because he was actually, when we started, he was quite unsure of himself about making sense of his baby's kind of behavior.
And I also think that that's really true and important what you're talking about, Sahara. But I also think that and we know more about this. Kevin was there. I've been listening to him as we have our own reflective supervision. You know, with the third party. I think that one of the things about it is that the bonding, the cue reading, and all of the positives are within a framework that's still pretty narrow at this point. And I think it's an important point that, you know, remember that what we're doing has, as all of us as home visitors, has so many different levels to it, that it has an intervention level to it, but there's also the promotion of well-being, the helping parents grow into their the relationship, and that what we're supporting, what we're striving to support here is optimal development. So that while this is really good what they're doing, and they do know each other, and they're reading each other's cues, and they know this is something they're really comfortable with, there's still, you know, when John goes up, he has a happy look on his face. When he comes down, it goes back, both of them go back to a kind of zero, flat affect almost immediately. And what's been exciting is that there's more that we can do here. There's more help that we can be, that we can be of more help in bringing real joy to this dyad, which has every intention of being connected to each other. And how do we help take that to the next level? And it's really a tremendous luxury that as a society, we are moving towards that now, that good enough is good, but that there's a lot more that we can do with the families who are willing to participate.
Oh, here's another comment. It says that I feel that, this is by Angela. I feel that having this kind of program is essential to have, since at times I notice the interaction with parents where mothers feel dad is being too rough with how they play. I feel that dads get disengaged being put on the spot with a home visitor, that I find myself having to normalize dad's input into baby's development and his roughness as client considers it is important for baby bonding time.
I think that's such an important comment, and sorry to jump in, Kevin, but I think the thing that I have learned in doing this work with dads, because I had the same concerns, you know, I've been doing this a long time, and even though I am a dad and understand the research on the difference between moms and dads and the way that as a group, there's wide variation, as Kevin and I both keep pointing out, that as a group, they behave differently with the babies, that I have this, was having the same response, like, whoa, dad, whoa, back off, man. And what I've learned to do, and perhaps what you can do with mom, is to watch the baby, not to watch the dad, not to watch whether it's rough or not rough, but watch to see whether the baby is enjoying this, and whether the dad, when things do get a little rougher than this particular baby wants at this particular moment, does the dad read that cue and back off a bit? And that we can really help moms understand that babies can accept a wider range of behavior from parents, and that in fact that's healthy. And the key, as I've now said 3 or 4 times, is to watch the baby. And if the baby's fine, then let's make room for different approaches to being with the baby.
Mm-hmm. How about we show the next video? Because I think that, oh, okay. It's a good moment to show the next video.
Cool. While Kevin's setting it up, what I can say is that these are two more pieces, and the thing that we'd like you to watch is how Kevin and the father and baby have built on the strengths that the dyad already had, and how things are developing. So watch for the changes.
Okay, here we go. Oh, hold on, sorry. Gotta get the audio on it.
Kevin, you know? Let's do it the other way around. Look here, you have to hold. Asian, put it together. Up, and now let's speak. Like it, no? Come, let's try and put it together. Oh, yeah, they're wrong. Okay, let's hold on. Now you're walking here. Want to say hello?
Hi. Seems like I'm getting in the way of your plan.
Here you go. Smaller hands up. Much stuff here inside. And here again. Try to take up. I want to play with the ball. Wait for this one.
So I forgot to mention, he was about 12 to 13 months in the first video, and in this next video, he's probably 14 to 15 months, I would say.
It comes back to you. Cheers again.
So either again by chat or by raising your hand, let's see what you thought about this one. What did you see? How did they grow? How do they grow together too?
You know, it would be great if anyone wants to be brave enough to unmute themselves and share their comments that way, if possible.
Just raise your hand or let me know if you'd like me to unmute you. Marlene said, Avon and I just observed that he was asking, what do you want me to do? He was making sounds and following his cues.
Yeah, so important. I mean, this is a reciprocal kind of play at an entirely different level. Yes, good. And then we have another comment from Diane about more rhythmicity between dad and baby. Yes, absolutely. There is this, it's tied to the bonding. They are flowing together in both segments of this second video in a much more responsive way, with the baby more in the lead, which is one of the cool parts. More verbal, yeah. Yes, so Carla is saying that the father is more verbal and giving more cues, verbal and nonverbal. He is, as well as the fact that he is responding to the baby's cues, that this is not both of these things where they're playing with the blocks and the ball and when they're playing with the cars, those are routines that they know, but they're much more open-ended than they were in the first couple of videos. What else did you see? What about affect?
I see that Mary's hand up. There's feedback coming here, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute again.
Yeah, I think we probably need to mute ourselves while somebody is speaking. Somebody else is speaking. We get feedback. Can we go back?
No, I think the feedback, I think, comes from the individual's phone. We have some more comments, though, if you'd like to address those.
Let's see.
Mary, if you could put your comment in the chat box, go ahead. Thank you.
So the father observes baby's reaction to the toy and responds by repeating the type of play. Yeah, exactly. And hands it back so that the baby can in the ball game. So first he's trying to get his attention with the blocks. And that's working, but then there's like a balloon or something over on the other side that turns out to be more interesting. And so the red ball comes out and dad keeps giving it back to the baby to reinitiate, to see if he's still interested, to follow the cues. Whereas in the last ones, the father was initiating and then trying to read the baby's cues to see if he was having fun. And it's just a completely, it's a switch. Let's see, father appears to be in, yeah. Right, do you want to say something, Kevin, about, I think this is really important. I want you to talk a little more about the dad and his affect and his general approach to things. But, I just want to begin by saying that we have a particular situation where the mother is experiencing serious depression. And I know that all of you are doing depression screening, and that even when moms don't get to the point of meeting the criteria for depression, there are times when it is hard for them to be as responsive as they could be, and so, or as they would like to be. And so in this situation, the dad is really filling in there and finding the joy and finding that connection. Really important. I'm going to shut up for a second.
No, it's really I'm going to be jumping around a little bit, but the point about the mom's depression, I think, is really important, because this is really a time in these videos where the mom has really, her affect has really started to improve. She's kind of functioning at a much higher level now, and you see that also having kind of an effect on the family. That's not to say that, I mean, and to sort of in addition, I think with the early support with the dad around the reflection and around reading cues, you see the dad has really started to develop. I mean, he's a really close relationship with his son. And I think also, I mean, there's so many factors developing here. The mom is doing better. The baby's kind of reaching milestones. The dad is really getting to know the baby, and is also implementing a lot that he's learning. But there's something that I think it's easy to say, oh, well, because the mom is doing better, then everyone's doing better, or that because the baby is more mature in his development, the dad is sort of better able to interact. And I think we often talk about that with dads. We say, well, it's easier for dads when babies get older. And I think it's easier for dads when babies to get older because dads have worked to get to know their baby, I mean, even if it doesn't always look like, I mean, there are many versions of that, but that at least in this situation, Klaus has really worked to get to know his baby. And so it's not only the maturation of the baby that has contributed to that. And I think to add, and I think we're hearing a lot about this in the comments, there's such a nice back and forth in both videos. There's much more joy. There's much more vitality. I think there was a comment about, who said that, I really like that the dad appears to, Carla, father appears to be enjoying their playtime. His affect demonstrates joy. He does. It does. And I think that when parents can really enjoy the play with their kids, they're much better able to develop the sort of develop the play, help their child develop. They're able to expand on what type of learning can happen in kind of these playful interactions. It's much more versatile. He's actually doing a lot of different things in these videos. A lot, particularly the second video, how he shifts. The first video in here, how he shifts from doing it with the block to the ball. And someone said this, it was so great, the rhythm of the play, and especially in that last video, you really see there's a really nice rhythm between the two of them. I almost think of them as actually almost like they're kind of dancing together, particularly in that last video. Now, what I think, contrary to what you might think we worked on at this point, it's a little, I think, different, because we shifted to actually talking much less about reading cues, and we talked much more about his own life. You know, we talked a lot about his relationship to his girlfriend, who's the baby's mom, Martha. We talked about his family history. His mother had a history of kind of severe depression. Some of his concerns around having his baby have a mom who was depressed. We talked about a lot of the cultural differences between kind of his ideas around parenting and the sort of very insular family that he grew up in, to Martha's family, who has a very large extended family who's very involved. And at times he felt very intrusive, particularly intrusive because she has a sort of extensive history of trauma, and some of the people who had traumatized her are people who play a big role in her life now. And so we talked a lot about how he can navigate that, how he can support Martha around this, how he can be there for her, how hard it can be for him to have these people around. There were periods where he definitely seemed to have bladder affect, where he seemed kind of mildly depressed. I don't think he was clinically depressed, but I think he was showing sort of depressive symptoms. So I was trying to create a sort of very supportive and reflective environment for him, which is, I mean, I don't know what type of training you all have had on this, but dads can, postnatally, about 10% of dads become clinically depressed. And when dads get clinically depressed, it has a kind of a ripple effect on a whole family, because dads tend to be more disengaged with the baby, so they're not, I'm here you see Klaus and you see how he's adding so much to John's life, but when you think about that being pulled away, that can have an effect on social emotional development, on cognitive development, on just kind of family structure. Moms can tend to be more depressed when dads get depressed. They feel less supported. Dads can be depressed in ways that are dissimilar to moms, so they tend to act out more. They tend to maybe spend more time gaming, or maybe spend more time working or being out of the house, or men are more likely to have affairs in the first year of a baby's life. So things that are more avoided, I would say. Yeah, sorry, what were you going to say, Richard?
No, I want to take this back to this assumption that we have, that dads are disinterested, or that dads don't want to, are going to wait. As Kevin was pointing out, we hear a lot that the dads get more involved as the baby gets develops more capacities. And I think, one of Prisma's comments is about there's much more space to explore the dad models. Dad is curious. The baby appears to be excited. And all of that has grown because they have been connected for a long time. It's certainly true that there's more to do with babies when they can do more. But it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy where we assume that dads aren't going to be interested until the baby's older. And so we don't engage them. We don't encourage that early involvement. And then when the baby is more competent, there's a lot of learning on the part of both of them to do. And we also assume when dads are disengaged that, they're just being dads again. And as Kevin points out, sometimes that can be some of the things that tell us that the dads don't want to be involved can be reframed as evidence that the father might be depressed. And Kevin is a real psychologist. The rest of us on this call are not, on the webinar, and so it's not for us to make a diagnosis, but certainly to wonder if there isn't something going on, and if there isn't some other help that the family could use. so that they can come around to re-engaging with the dad as early as possible. Because as I said, all of that buildup, all of that early experience that Klaus had in a scaffolded way with Kevin for months meant that when it got to the point where the baby had much more capacity, they could just take off. They were in a whole different place from a dad who we would suddenly say, okay, now Dad, now that he can throw the ball, are you ready to play? Because in that experience where they're throwing the ball, where the baby's throwing the ball and Dad is catching it, he's really good at that, by the way. You know, that's a much more nuanced set of interactions than if they were just sitting in that spot and suddenly the baby threw the ball and the dad got it back. They know each other really well now, and they are finding joy together in this in a way that wouldn't have been possible or as quickly possible as if he had not been engaged quite so early.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely. And you really see how if there was a shift in the sort of themes of their relationship in the first set of videos, from like a sensory to more kind of relational theme, you're really seeing an explosion of communication, I would say, between the two of them. But you're also seeing that, and this is where I think this is sort of a behind the scenes kind of thing, but you're really seeing that in his relationship with his girlfriend. You're seeing that in his relationship with me around just what he's open to talk about. You see that in his relationship with his child, and so in general, this theme also there was a real focus on alleviating kind of parental stress. You know, what are the things we can do to make him feel more kind of settled in his life? And all of these, and when you have a family, you know, there are so many aspects that go into running a family that contribute to why families are so stressful. One is raising your child. One is managing your kind of extended family. One is managing or having a relationship with your partner, or if you're not in that relationship with your child's mom. And so there are so many factors here at play, and we're sort of in different ways. And also, even I want to even add one more sort of thing, is that just like how you figure out these basic things, like, are we going to eat together? How do we figure out what my baby likes to eat? How do we figure out the sort of flow of how we spend time together on the weekend, or after work, or in the morning? And so you see in this period that there's a real settling of the family. Actually, one of my favorite moments in these videos, in this last video, is actually a moment where I felt like I really kind of I get really awkward when I'm filming and then I see something I want to comment on, and it just never goes well. But in the, I think it was the third video, or the first clip of the second set, where John looks over at me and I say something like, I'm getting in the middle of your play, or like, are you something like that, like I'm disrupting your play. And I think actually in retrospect, no, that was not what I was doing. It was actually, what he was saying to me was that he actually is quite skilled at navigating two people at once, which is a real sort of explosion in his development. And he's doing that. And we're all actually, even though I'm recording, we're all actually interacting together. And that's something that I think is consistent with the family that he's living in. Everyone is working together a little bit better. There's really oh yeah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I think that's such an important change from how he was using you how John was using you in the earlier videos, where when he looked over at you, it was because it was time to disengage. He needed something else to pay attention to. And so, I think it's a big change. And I want to reconnect, re-stress here this idea. We have a comment from Sahara, but the one before that where she says the father is now talking more during this video, the baby is taking the lead, and they stay consistent with the baby's activity. That it is definitely true that things go better in the family when things are going better, when you're feeling more competent as a parent, and that the support that Kevin's been able to give the father, this narration that he's doing, which enlivens the whole set of interactions, would really, is, again, I know I keep saying the same thing, but it's about encouraging you to find ways to engage with the dads. It's because he's had this supported set of experiences with the baby over these months, so that now that we're at this level, they can really take advantage of it. So I want to go on for a second, and we want to open this and have a conversation with you about ways that you can be engaging with dads. And we want to complicate your lives, because they're not complicated enough already while you're doing this work. But Sahara also asks, how would you address a father who seems depressed? What would you say? Would you say that fathers are open to receive extra support? So I do.
Can I answer the second question and you answer the first? Is that okay? Can we start with the second one?
Yeah. Kevin and I it's hard, we get it. We both get excited about this. So please, Kevin, go ahead.
Well, I like hearing Richard's response. I want to hear Richard's response to the first one. That's why I'm not answering it. But I think that extra support, and this is something that I've heard a lot about. I think when dads are approached in a way that they're valued for the role they bring to their child, as a foundation for the way you go about interacting with them. That's like you're going into the interaction believing that dads are important for children, for family. Dads, I found, are much more available to talk about what's going on for them, and wanting of extra support. When you can go into it being curious, but also believing that the better I can help you feel, not necessarily in the moment, but if it's about making a referral, if it's about talking through something in parenting, or giving you a reflective ear, like the dads are quite open to this extra support. And I think, that there is a lot of research about how men are more disinclined to get support. I think there might be some truth to that, but when you go in with an open mind and a belief that they're important, dads are much more open. I think when you go in thinking like this is an additional thing I have to do, or that dads are, it's really like they're less important, they're really not interested in support. They don't really want to be heard. Like when you go in with those sort of negative ideas about dads, I mean, they're more likely to be closed. Richard, do you want to talk more about this?
Yeah, I want to take the not a psychologist approach to what can we do as home visitors. And I think we have this really tremendous opportunity. There's an intimacy to being in the family's home. And that gives us opportunities to encourage both parents to take advantage of other resources as they're out there. And I think that the key to this, Kevin's right, the research says that dads are less likely to to go for mental health services, but they will be more open if they feel that you have an authentic relationship with them than if, you know, you just make the suggestion after a short amount of time getting to know the dad. But I would also explore, you know, there is serious, every culture has a different form of stigma against mental health services. And so being sensitive to that, and we mean both big C culture and small c culture, like in this family. And I would also explore with dads about the degree to which they are isolated, the degree to which they have other opportunities to be with people that they can talk to and do stuff with. So that we do want to be able to make a referral to a mental health specialist, but it's not the only way to overcome, particularly if it's not clinical depression. Supporting the relationship with the child, ensuring that the family has other connections. Are there stressors in their lives that could be contributing to the potential depression? That there are things that we can do about, that we have partners in housing, in healthcare, in all of the other areas that we are connected to, that would be supporting the dads as well as the moms. The other piece that I would add is that, as important as we know that this is, not everybody's going to take advantage of it. And so, being sensitive, staying with it, keeping it in the front of your mind, that it's something that you'd like to get to without pushing the father away by pushing is a really important part of this.
Richard, should we open it up to the last sort of section?
I think so. We have about 15 minutes, and we're hoping that you've had some insight into roles that dads can play. So much of this is about, our own implicit, and I don't even want to say biases, our own worldviews. And that so much of what we're trying to encourage people to do is to open that, to be aware of that and to open up. And so but we don't have any prescriptions at this point. What we have are ways of thinking. We have experiences seeing how engaged dads can be and what a big difference that can make for a family. But we have our own experiences doing this. What we don't know yet is what to tell the mostly female workforce in home visiting about how to engage dads. And so what we'd love to be able to do is to engage with you about what this brings up for you. How does it, and as the PowerPoint shows, what does this change in your thinking about the work? And perhaps the best way to do that is to think of an example of a situation where you might have done something differently. So either one, where you want to say, oh man, I never thought about that, or yeah, I was just in this house and the dad was there, or the mom taught, one of the things that we didn't talk about was the number of dads who are discounted because even though they're actually highly involved in the child's development, they're not living in the home. There's so many situations where the moms and dads are living separately, but the dads are still an important part of the child's life. So, yeah, thank you, Jan. What has been your experience when dads are part of a visit?
Sahara said, I think that sometimes fathers' roles reflect their own upbringing and perhaps breaking the cycle that fathers are just the providers. Fathers are just as important as mothers during their baby's development. You know, I think that there's no question that that the ghosts in the nursery, to use a Selma Freiberg term, are definitely present in a father's life, and I think that being aware of how parents learn to parent from how they were raised. You know, fathers learn to parent how they were raised by their moms and by their dads and their moms, and to be sensitive to that. And you know, it's from my perspective at least, you know, keeping that in mind, but also being curious about or open to talk to a dad about that if that's something that or a mom that they feel they want to talk about. You know, it was actually interesting with Klaus because many of the dads that we had worked with, actually, it was almost reversed, where the dads felt that they needed to talk before they could really get to playing with their baby. So even now I'm working with a dad who feels like he needs so much support around what's going on in his mind, really, and in his family and in his kind of history, that we haven't even gotten on the floor yet. We talk about the baby, we think about the baby, but we're not on the floor yet.
And I'm wondering, because I like this, that you're right, that many of the roles that fathers bring are this assumption that they need to be providers. What kind of role could we play as home visitors not in telling fathers that they're wrong to think that, but in welcoming them in? We had, let me see this. Here's.
I think the last comment that was not addressed was from Mary Kai. As a home visit, I truly believe that there's a need for more programs for fathers. There are so many times where fathers are present during the visit and shows interest in participating. However, there are times where I've had dad not showing interest in participating in the visit, and I try to understand why that is. I'm happy to learn that there's beginning to be more programs for fathers, and there's a great program called Project Fatherhood, as Richard knows about Project Fatherhood, in the city of Long Beach, and I'm wondering if you have any connection to their program.
Let's go back to the top part where, you know, what I really appreciate is the wondering. The wondering is a really important part, and talking to dads about it, noticing their interest, but maybe their inability, or, you know, wondering in each case is, do they feel like it's inappropriate for them to participate? Do they not want to be on the floor? What is it? And wondering together. So I think that's a really important part of this, and I'm happy to see it. Our connection to Project Fatherhood, as Malika knows, I was at Children's Institute for a long time, which is the home base for Project Fatherhood. And we have been thinking for 6 or 7 years about how to focus part of Project Fatherhood on children 0 to 5. And Alan Michael Graves, who was the director for a number of years and has now gone on, has been really instrumental in helping us think about developing this program. So we definitely agree that referrals, and it is true that there's Project Fatherhood in Long Beach, but Project Fatherhood is all around the county. And knowing where it's available and making a connection to that so that dads can meet other dads who are into being dads can be a very important part of supporting this work. Yeah. I'm looking at Prisma's comment about welcoming father before the visits begin. Yeah, making sure that he's not an afterthought, that as you set up from the very beginning, that you're assuming that he's going to be part of this. And if he doesn't want to be, that's a different thing. But the underlying assumption we're hoping is that, well, of course, any dad that's around ought to be involved, and we'd love to have you.
And that, in the infant world, you know, and what it takes for an infant to grow, you know, that fathers are never afterthoughts, you know, and to go into it believing that, you know, that's powerful and it's important.
Yes, and we have another comment from Myra, which is a really important one, where the father who was juggling his responsibilities and wanted to be involved, but the mother was dismissive. And I'm sorry. The mother was dismissive. And I think that, you know, one of the things that we have to be aware of is that first and foremost, when there are two parents who are engaged, there is competition among the parents. For those of you who've done any of the touch points training, T. Barry Brazelton was always talking about the competition for the baby's attention and, most importantly, for the baby's love. And in situations where it's culturally appropriate for the mom to be the primary, it can be challenging to have a dad who's engaged. And one of the things that we can do is to open the conversation, to hear what the mom is concerned about, and to let her know that there's room for different ways of playing with the child, of being with the child, and that actually the baby can benefit from that, and that it doesn't take away from her relationship to the child. It doesn't make her less important, that it actually gives her a bit of a break, and that, you know, especially with a newborn, that's one of the things that moms need more than anything.
Mm-hmm. And in a little bit of father research that's out there, there is one of the things that men talk about as being the biggest obstacle to developing a relationship with their baby, and that's sometimes the moms who aren't allowed. They have a term for it, and they call it maternal gatekeeping, and that's essentially where in the situation that you had described, it's where the moms don't really allow, in a way, the dads to be involved in a way to develop that relationship. And I think, you know, we can't really talk about it now in the few minutes we have. It's a very complicated kind of issue, but it is something that dads need to have an opportunity to develop a relationship with their baby. And actually, dads find it easiest to do when they're alone with their baby, when they're given time alone, when they're given the confidence that they can do it, when someone's not sort of there telling them, hey, you're not doing this right, or do it this way, or, oh, I'm just going to do it for you, you can't do it, you know.
Right. And when they're using, if you take a look at Barbara's comment about the mom feeling that the dad was too rough, if you use the mom standard as the right way to do it, and what the dad is doing as wrong because it's not what mom is doing, then there is an issue. And one of the things that we can do is, again, go back to helping moms understand that there is this range that babies can accept. Obviously, there are some things that are too rough, but most of the things that we think are too rough, you know, we can watch and see if the baby is interested. Babies are also different. Some babies will be more open to the rougher play, and some will not. And if we help both the mom and the dad watch what the baby's reactions are to the way the different parents play with them, we can help them see that, man, there's a lot of stuff that babies like. There's a whole range of things that babies like, and no one person can provide all of that.
Diane has I like Diane's comment. I think it's important. I had a father that was interested in being part of the visits when we started the parent survey. However, Dad was less interested in being part of the visits when we started talking about breastfeeding. When I asked Mom why Dad was not part of the visits anymore, Mom said Dad felt it was more for Mom. Today's discussion helped me to open more conversation with Dad.
Yeah, that's a beautiful example. But sometimes, you know, it's something that men feel that that A, they're not doing. We cannot breastfeed, but also that it's kind of a thing for them. And to help normalize this, to help, you know, in a society that is highly sexualized, women's breasts, to help normalize feeding as their primary purpose, and helping dads learn about what's going on and what's going to happen and when the transition to food is going to happen and all of those things is a role that we can play that I think is really important.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky. I mean, you're bringing up a tricky point, and Diane, yeah. But I think, like, you know, even as we're talking today, it makes me think, like, well, how could we have and I don't exactly have an answer, but how could we have a conversation with a family or with a mom and dad that's focused on breastfeeding while also engages Dad in the conversation? You know, like, is there a way to think about having that conversation so that Dad doesn't leave saying this is not for me, and Mom gets all the information she needs about breastfeeding? I think something to think about. Yeah. But actually, even that's a really, I'm grateful that you brought that up, because that makes us, I think Richard and I think about that in our work, and the work that we're doing in our consultation and kind of support of different programs, to be more, to have dads more integrated. How do we navigate situations like this?
It looks like we're just about out of time, but I love the idea of incorporating fathers into the Welcome Baby book. Yes.
That is something we are changing. So we are making revisions to that Welcome Baby book. So we are including fathers more in there.
Great. And then a resource, too many chats happening at once. Okay. Angela wrote about resources for maternal gatekeeping. Good question. You know, maybe I can, is there, Malika, is there a way to distribute resources or articles? Or?
Yeah, if you send
I
me
just
anything
want to
you
think about.
Yeah.
I will. I'll send you something and you can distribute it. Yeah. Okay. I'll do that.
Okay. We have a couple more comments. I just do want to be respectful of everyone's time. Would you like to go over those last two comments and then we could wrap up?
Talk about allowing the father to get more involved. Yeah. So this is really, I like this, the father involved in reading, talking, singing. Lea canta habla, as First Five will always tell us, that these are things that both moms and dads can do. And I love the idea of bringing it back to that, of creating that opportunity for dads. And I think that that our role as one of the things that we can do in noticing that the times when there is a problem where the mother is being the gatekeeper is saying that directly. You know, boy, it looks like, You don't want the competition, or it looks like, you know, depending on your relationship with the mom, obviously, or understanding what the challenge is to her to have the dad involved, because you know, each family is going to have a different way of seeing that. Younger dads more interested in taking part in the visit than in the, that's cool. For the most part, they're working most of the time. Yes, so that is always the issue about when we're available, since we have our own families and our own lives, to see parents at times when dads who are working and moms who are working as they go back to work can be available, is a major structural issue that we really need to think about at the policy level. And at this point, you know, how is it that we can balance your needs and availabilities with when the families are available, and create socialization activities on the weekends, creating other opportunities are ways to think about it. But there are some really big issues for us to be thinking about.
I think we addressed, I hope, all of the comments.
I think so.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I think that this is kind of just a beginning, and, you know, this is information that the home visitors will take into their visits and probably engage with it a little bit more, I'm sure, later. More comments or thoughts will come up. So if anyone has any questions or anything that they would like to, you know, that comes up later, feel free to email me, and I can pass it on along, and we can always continue the discussion on other venues. So with that, I just really want to thank Dr. Cohen, Dr. Gruenberg. We really appreciate your taking the time to tell us about your work.
This was fun, and thank you guys so much for the work that you're doing with families.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we will talk to you guys next time. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.